Okay guys, today we have a video on squatters' rights, and to my more liberal viewers, I have to warn you, I'm gonna get pretty lefty on this one, so make sure to buckle yourselves in, because the homelessness crisis is a major issue globally really, but especially in America, where in the wealthiest country in the world, you would expect and think that we wouldn't let people die on the streets from homelessness and starvation, but instead we've decided to turn our housing system into a for-profit horror story where nowadays large chunks of homes are being bought up by corporations or investors, with about 1/4 currently owned by investors and an over 80% increase year over year seen from 2020 to 2021. That piece of the pie for everyone else is getting smaller and smaller and bigger for the rich guy, where you can see here most have up to 9 properties that they own, but all the way up to where some of these investors are seen having over 1,000 properties or even buying 1,000 properties in one purchase. I don't think you should have 2 properties when there are people who have 0, let alone 1,000, just to make an extra dollar while people are struggling and again dying on the street. Which brings up the issue of today's video. Squatting, which is the act of a homeless person going in these homes that are left vacant by investors. They're either charging ridiculously high for rent, maybe they're keeping it for seasonal like Airbnb renting it out, or hoarding it until the prices will go up and they can make the kind of profit margins they want to see. Now, we're going to get into my opinions. But first, let's watch a clip of someone discussing this on the news, a show called The Project.
Do you think it's right that we have thousands of vacant, abandoned homes while we have people living on the street?
No, I don't. But is this the right way to handle it, though? I mean, shouldn't we be focused on policy?
Yeah, I think there's definitely room to focus on policy, but what do we do in the meantime when people are on the street while we're focusing on policy?
Use the word abandoned. Who owns a house and abandons it, Jordan?
Many people. I don't know if you've ever gone down the street and seen like houses empty for decades, but I certainly have.
No, I haven't.
No.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Nope.
How many, do you have any abandoned investment properties, Steve?
No, I don't. But I mean, I'm just trying to get to the economics of this. If someone buys a property, I mean, yes, we've had land banking, obviously, from foreigners, but that's not widespread. There's not thousands of them.
On the census night, we had 10% of all housing stock vacant.
Now, it's important to clarify they are not based in America. We are going to be specifically talking about America, but I wanted to show him because he makes some really sound points. Policy both takes a lot of time to pass, but even more time to set into effect and realize. Though it is very much important to also be focused on, the question is, what do we do now while people are currently living and dying in the streets at mercy of the elements, so to speak? And all the while, currently 16 million homes in America sit vacant. That well outnumbers the homeless population. They're sitting vacant for months, years, some even over a decade or more. This is a problem that exists and needs addressed. Obviously, squatting isn't ideal, but neither is hoarding vacant homes. And I think you lose sight of humanity when you hear that a homeless person took shelter in an abandoned home for whatever reason, and your worry instantly jumps to the safety of the homeowner or to the rights of the homeowner and not the quality of life for the man struggling to survive on the street, so much so that he felt a need to run into a random place of shelter. Homes should be for exactly that, for living in, for taking shelter. They shouldn't be these investment vehicles for wealth before all else. That definitely shouldn't take priority to the struggle that people who are living on the street are induced to.
How'd you like to have someone squat in your place that you owned?
It's not vacant, nor is it an investment property. So
you understand my question, don't you?
Look, if I had an investment property that was vacant for more than 2 years, for example, I would put it on the list.
So, Jordan, I think we can all agree that what you're proposing is not the ideal solution.
No, absolutely.
The ideal solution is that there would be some kind of policy response to deal with land that's just not being used in this way. What would you like to see?
Well, I'd like to see like a national vacant residential land tax that is quite prohibitive to either encourage people to rent out your house or sell it. or do something with it. Just don't let it sit there while we have a housing crisis. It's pretty simple.
It's always the same terrible arguments for anything that is ostensibly leftist. Oh, you support immigrants? Why don't you let them into your home then? Oh, you think homelessness is bad? Let them into your home then. And to be clear, I and no one else is advocating that these people should be allowed into your home. We want them to be able to have a home of their own, like everybody else. Taking them into my home sounds like kidnapping. I'm not advocating for that, nor is individual acts conducive to change in the same way that a structural realignment is. What we need is housing first policies. We spend more on the homeless and emergency care, drug addiction counseling, cleanup, policing even. We spend more in taxpayer dollars on that than we would if we just housed them. And this is bared out in data, and homelessness is generally matched with these other underlying issues, mental health issues, drug addiction, physical injury, all of which are much easier to remedy if you're in the comfort of shelter and not living on the street or getting them cared for and then being pushed back into the conditions that caused them. When changing is a reality, when you actually see that happening in front of you, when you're not fighting for your survival every day, these things become a bit more realistic. I also agree that we need a very, very steep land vacancy tax, something that progressively grows as time grows as well. Incentivize people to rent out or sell their homes and not sit on them for years if we are going to let them own them, which I think real estate ownership and the selling of housing and land is immoral, full stop. It's also inexplainable. What gives you the right to own land? Is it because you got there first? Well, okay, the Native Americans own America. We don't own America. We got to give it back to them. Is it because you have enough money to buy it? Well, okay, if somebody comes to your house right now with more money than you, can they then buy your home? You can't really dole out who deserves the land. It's always just some qualifier that really doesn't make sense if you go into it. And you're also just leveraging as the real estate owner, as the landlord, you're leveraging your comfortable financial position to be able to buy a home, to then turn around and sell it for a gain to someone who is more desperate for that exact same piece of shelter, just so you can then profit off of all their hard work that is required to pay their bills. I think that land should be controlled by the government and doled out by need first, where you're paying a set percent of your income as rent or to pay for it, and it stays that way for life. You get a job making double what you were making when you moved in, your rent stays the same. If your income goes up, unless you then want to move to maybe a more desirable location, more room, something like that, and no evictions for a loss of job because your rent would drop with your income. Allow private builders to build on the land, split the units 50-50, public housing for need for those who are in necessity, and the rest can then be rented out by the private builders to see some sort of a profit motive. Let them pay a small percent of that profit also back into the purchasing of more land to keep these things going. And it'll obviously, they're selling to people in more comfortable financial situations. Those who can't afford that type of thing get the guaranteed housing. Vienna did this in the early 1900s. This isn't a revolutionary idea that I'm just thinking of off the top of my head. And now they have the most quality public housing in the world, where over 60% of their population still currently lives in these exact same structures. If you look at America's public housing, it's falling to ruins less than a decade after being built. You look at Vienna's and its quality. This would fix the incentive to only build quality housing that is for profit. And it would also fix the incentive to hoard. With the steep tax that I mentioned, it would make housing a guarantee for those who are without or who are housing insecure. It stops it from becoming too burdensome on your income as, again, fixed rate of your income, and it doesn't move up. You're not going to get evicted. Shelter isn't intertwined with your work. You're not going to get evicted just for losing your job or temporarily losing your income. And there would still be the opportunity for profit from private builders after we made sure our population was housed. So no, squatters are not and will never be the bad guys. The bad guys are the investors, the rich guys, the corporations who want to keep homes from being lived in or being used efficiently. If housing wasn't such a vehicle for wealth, if these corporations didn't see the need to buy up thousands of property, we would be much more inclined to dole it out where needed. There would be much more available for those who needed to use it. We created this problem, and then we want to turn around and chastise those who are unable to live up to it. It's kind of sick, really. If you enjoyed this video, we're Social Society. We're a commentary channel influenced by politics, society, and the economy. We are pretty left-leaning on this channel, but we're open to our right-wingers as well. The biggest thing here is having conversations that get everyone to the bottom of the truth. If that sounds like something that could interest you, consider smashing that subscribe button. leaving us a like, or even commenting on this video. We even have memberships available as low as $3 if you'd like to support, because the only way we become a society is together.